Who is Jesus? Jesus is without doubt the single most influential person in history. His biography has topped the international bestsellers list for 2,000 years. The most globally adopted calendar is centered on his birth. So the year is 2020, years since Jesus. His birth, Christmas, and resurrection, Easter, are two of the world's biggest celebrations. More movies, songs, paintings, and books have been made about him. More charities, orphanages, hospitals, and schools have been set up in his name than any other. And his teachings have defined Western thought, education, law, and morality. Around the world today, about 2.5 billion people call him their personal God and Saviour. That's not bad for a kid literally born in a barn. But Jesus isn't only the most influential person in human history, he's also the most controversial. It seems everybody has a different view about Jesus. Today there are those who say, Jesus is a fairy tale. They list him alongside the Tooth Fairy, Banana Man, and Godzilla. He's mythology, a soft swear word you can say in front of your grandma. But others say Jesus was a revolutionary. They say he existed, but list him alongside Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. He was a good bloke, a poor working class dude who became a voice for the people. Now, these people generally picture Jesus with long shaggy hair, dirty feet, love heart t-shirt. They don't know the specifics of his message, but they love that he invented Christmas and they'll happily wear a cross necklace for good luck. It's like when the Millennium Dome opened in London. One exhibition labelled Jesus a good teacher who died tragically young. Fidel Castro called him the greatest revolutionary in human history. Others say Jesus is all propaganda. They love original Jesus but hate how he's been used to control people and push political ideological agendas. Now this has undoubtedly happened. Despite being a typical Judean Jew, throughout history, Jesus has variously been portrayed as an airy and white blonde baby to a dreadlocked black man. He's been vegan, he's been pro-Brexit, you name it. Many paint their own picture of Jesus simply to support their own cause. Next, there's Jesus the Conman. Many think Jesus was just a trickster who capitalized on ancient stupidity. Like a first century answer to Harry Houdini, David Blaine, Derren Brown, Dynamo. He walked on water, but a disciple / glamorous assistant was snorkeling underneath. Water to wine, sponsored by Ribena. This Jesus was doing card tricks around Jerusalem, trying to catch a Netflix deal. But what about Jesus the prophet? This is the view of most other religions. Jesus was just another holy bloke like Moses, Muhammad, or Buddha, who had some strong spiritual vibes. He taught amazingly about God and fulfilled every messianic prophecy in the Old Testament, including ones beyond his control, like place of birth, mode of death, and most amazingly, coming back from death. Perhaps there was something more to this guy. Some say Jesus was an angel or a demon. I kid you not. From the first days of his ministry through to today, people have honoured Jesus as an angel and accused him of being a devil. Perhaps these are fair guesses for someone who brings sight to the blind, controls waves and walks out of his own tomb. Finally, there's Jesus as God. Billions believe Jesus was who he repeatedly, emphatically and unapologetically claimed to be, God in the flesh. They say this is consistently proven by the prophecies, miracles, teachings, resurrection, and testimony of believers. So there we go, 7 common responses. But what about you? Who do you say Jesus is? Or whatever your current opinion of Jesus, well, surely one thing he can't be is boring or unintriguing. The reason they killed him was he was too exciting to be safe. So if you've never considered the identity of the most influential and controversial person in history, well, why not? Chuck away whatever preconceived idea you might have in your head from RE, South Park, The Simpsons, your weird Christian relative with the cross stitch. Look yourself at the history. I want to share with you an eyewitness account of a time Jesus was at a massive festival and it absolutely kicks off. Let me read John chapter 8, 48. The Jews answered Jesus, "Aren't we right in saying that you are a Samaritan and demon-possessed?" "I'm not possessed by a demon," said Jesus, "but I honor my Father and you dishonor me. I'm not seeking glory for myself, but there is one who seeks it, and he is the judge. Very truly I tell you, whoever obeys my word will never see death." At this they exclaimed, "Now we know that you're demon-possessed. Abraham died, so did the prophets. Yet you say that whoever obeys your word will never taste death? Are you greater than our father Abraham? He died, and so did the prophets. Who do you think you are?" Jesus replied, "If I glorify myself, my glory means nothing. My Father, whom you claim as your God, is the one who glorifies me. Though you do not know him, I know him. If I said I didn't, I'd be a liar like you, but I do know him and obey his word. Your father Abraham rejoiced at the thought of seeing my day. He saw it and was glad." "You're not yet 50 years old," they said to him, "and you've seen Abraham?" "Very truly I tell you," Jesus answered, "before Abraham was born, I am." At this they picked up stones to stone him, but Jesus hid himself, slipping away from the temple grounds. Now, all I want to do is make 7 simple deductions from this passage. Deduction number 1, Jesus isn't a fairy tale. This passage is just one eyewitness historical account of Jesus' life, of which there are many, both inside and outside the Bible, written by Jews, Romans, Greeks, believers and unbelievers. This isn't hearsay. This is first-hand eyewitness testimony we're dealing with. This hasn't been altered over the years. We've got incredibly early manuscripts of this account, the earliest of which is up in Manchester, of all holy places. And this isn't a vague account. John tells us specific places, names, dates. We know this event occurred at the Festival of Tabernacles in the final 2 years of Jesus' ministry in Judea. John circulated this account in the lifetime of people who were there to corroborate what he said. And this hasn't been spiced up to make a sale. John gained nothing for writing this. In fact, the opposite. Roman authorities poisoned and exiled him. What we have here is credible history. Deduction 2, Jesus isn't just some political revolutionary. Revolutionaries stand up for their own people against corruption, injustice, or some earthly cause. Well, given the Jews were occupied by Rome at the time, this is the kind of saviour they wanted. One who would rise up, deliver a speech starting with, "I have a dream," and send the Romans packing. But that wasn't Jesus. Look who Jesus is debating here. It's the Jews, his own people, religious people. If you like debating religious people, it turns out you and Jesus actually have a lot in common. And Jesus says some shocking stuff here. Look at verse 54. "My Father, whom you claim as your God." 55, you don't know him. That's like telling a firefighter they don't know fire, or a doctor they don't know medicine. He tells a bunch of religious dudes who reject him they don't know God. So much for voice of the people. But it gets even more outrageous. Martin Luther King may have thought his words could end racism. Mother Teresa might have thought her words could end poverty. Look at what Jesus says about his words in 51. "Whoever obeys my words will never see death." Jesus doesn't want us to confuse him as some nice guy, activist, social justice warrior. His claims were cosmically bigger. He said he was here to end death. Deduction 3, Jesus rejected the propaganda. Jesus was a Jewish man, right? That means he looked Jewish, ate Jewish, partied Jewish. He wasn't Jewish, he was Jewish. In verse 48, these particular Jews are so upset that Jesus wasn't the Jesus they wanted. They say, "You're a Samaritan." You'll notice Jesus doesn't even respond to this ridiculous idea. You can just change somebody's identity to suit your beliefs. That's true today. You might want Jesus to be white, black, left-wing, right-wing, pro this, pro that to suit your desires, but that's just a form of self-deception. Jesus calls it out in verse 55 as lying. Deduction 4, Jesus is not a Conman. It amazes me how many people today try to explain away the miracles by turning Jesus into a magician, often after watching Family Guy. But what's really amazing is nobody who met Jesus ever made that accusation. They just don't go there. All they ask in this passage is if he's demon-possessed, because they repeatedly saw with their own eyes Jesus doing the impossible, healing blind people that they knew from birth, healing crippled friends, raising their dead children, feeding 5,000 people, calming storms. These weren't stupid people. They were aware of magic tricks. We've got records of illusions being performed for thousands of years before Jesus. No, Jesus did see miracles in front of fishermen. He healed in front of doctors. He raised the dead in front of grieving parents in a culture that knew death, that knew dead people didn't just rise, spring back to life with a word. Nobody present accused Jesus of being a con man. They simply asked by what power he did what he did. Deduction 5, Jesus is not a prophet. Of course, it's common to label Jesus as a holy man or a prophet who told others to glorify God. That's what a prophet did. But it strikes me Jesus is meticulously careful to ensure we don't mistake him as a mere prophet. Jesus, before our passage in chapter 8, verse 23, says, "I'm from above, you're of this world, I am not of this world." Then in verse 50, he says, "I'm not seeking glory for myself, but there is one who seeks it, and he's the judge." And then 54, "My Father, whom you claim is your God, is the one who glorifies me." Prophets tell us to glorify God. Jesus says God glorifies him. That's an outrageous statement. Look at the Jews' response in 53. "Are you greater than Abraham? He died, so did the prophets. Who do you think you are?" Well, clearly Jesus didn't think he was a prophet. Deduction 6. Jesus is not an angel or a demon. As we run out of options, crazier ideas arrive, and the Jews directly ask, "Are you a demon?" And Jesus directly answers, "No." And truth be told, what he's doing seems distinctly non-demonic. I reckon Satan would be pretty upset if demons were going around loving people, healing them, telling them to read their Bibles and follow God. So maybe he's an angel. But it seems Jesus would hate for us to mistake him as a mere angel. Verse 56, Jesus says, "Abraham rejoiced at seeing his day." And the Jews respond, "Abraham couldn't possibly know you." And then Jesus drops the bomb. He says, "Before Abraham was even born, I am." Now, this isn't a moment of bad grammar. Missed a few classes at Nazareth Elementary. No, this is totally intentional. The phrase "I am" is unmistakable to a Jewish audience. I am is God's name. Yahweh, Jehovah, I am. It comes from when Moses asks God's name at the burning bush and God replies, "I am." It's an incredibly holy, sacred name for God that many Jews daren't even speak or write. The Jews asked Jesus how Abraham, born 1800 years earlier, could possibly know him, and Jesus says, "Well, because I am." In case you're in any doubt Jesus just claimed to be God, well, look at the response. They try to stone him. If you skip to chapter 10:33, they say, "We weren't trying to stone you for any good work, but because you claim to be God." To identify Jesus as an angel is to place him lower than he'd place himself. So deduction 7, Jesus claims to be God. You know, as we read through the story, Jesus repeatedly makes this claim. It was these claims that led the once skeptical author you might know, C.S. Lewis, to conclude Jesus couldn't be just a great moral teacher. A person who makes these sorts of claims is either a lunatic, a liar, or who he said he was. And he just doesn't seem like a lunatic or a liar. So remember the old Sherlock Holmes maxim: once you've ruled out the impossible, well, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. You've seen what Jesus says about himself, so let me ask you again. Who do you say Jesus is? Because if Jesus is God, that has implications for our lives. It means we're not here by random chance. It means we don't get to decide what God is like because, well, he's introduced himself to us. And it means we should listen to what Jesus has to say about life and death. What he's offering is seriously good news. You know, I honestly believe the most important decision any individual will ever make is their response to the claims of Jesus Christ. So don't put it off. Who do you say he is?